I am currently cutting up Pleurotus ostreatus, or pearl oyster mushroom, which I got earlier, and several pounds of it actually. Really stoked. I was out on the trail, and a couple of gentlemen were trying to identify another um, another cluster of mushrooms on a tree, and I said oyster mushrooms, and they were both really happy that I positive ID'd them because I just that familiar with them at this point. I'm like, oh, I know what those are. Those are good. I said, grab all of them because it's just the fruiting body, and it's sort of the tail end of its life cycle. Um, and there's no point in leaving any of it behind. But they left about a pound of it sitting on the tree. But then, like little while later, Luna and I are hiking along, and I see out of the corner of my eye um, all this white sitting at the base of a tree, and I didn't really look up at the moment, but I went right over to it, and I said, "Oh, well, there's mine as well, a big cluster of them." So here is a pile that I need to go through. See how much I can cook up with the zucchini. I have a zucchini a friend gave me, um, but I just wanted to point out the the oyster is almost like a delicacy. It's a really choice edible, and it goes well with several different things. Here I've got it with squash, just with putting put it in a pot with summer squash and butter. I need to put a little oil in here, but it's sort of steaming and frying, sautéing. Um, I'll turn the camera on this in a minute, but I wanted to keep going over the cutting. The process there is quite the quite the thing, as it were. Um, One thing that I try to point out with mushrooms really early on is to never wash them. When you wash a mushroom, it basically says to the mushroom, "Hey, it just rained. It's time to release spore and do our thing," because um, that's what they want to do. They just want to, propagate, and it's the tail end of it. So when you get them wet, they just get slimy. They become a mess to work with. Um, Best thing is to take a cheap, what I call a cheap chip brush. This is a 1 inch brush, and usually the bristles are, around an inch and a half long, and cut them down so you have a good stiff edge to work with, and then simply brush the mushroom off and away into, a compost bucket or something like that. Here it's just, a little bit of dirt. I'll clean off a cutting board afterward, but just give them a good brush, and I'm just cutting these into little 1 inch pieces or thereabouts, and a little bit elongated. Um, but I'm really stoked to have this much, um, considering how dry it's been. But then this is how mushrooms happen. There's a period of rain, and then right after the rain, it gets cold or colder. In the last week or so, that colder has been around 51 degrees, at least in the higher elevations, and this is a perfect temperature. Actually, 60 degrees is a perfect temperature for most mushrooms to get, to start their cycle. Um, so a period of wet, period, period by, followed by a period of colder temperatures, followed by a period of dry, and over and over like repeating that cycle every few days or once a week or so is guaranteed to get a flush of pretty much anything that's out there for fall mushrooms. And it's that same kind of pattern that I've noticed that mushrooms, fungi thrive in, um, as well as several other factors which I can't even get into describing because I don't know mycology that well. Um, I know a tiny, tiny amount. I have to say that when I was growing up, I knew shaggy mane, I knew giant puffball, and I didn't know much else. There weren't too many other things that there were um, that were available or that I knew when I was really young. But I would say that my old man taught me as much as he knew at the time, and oh, that was quite a bit. It was, and it sort of stayed there for a long time. I didn't have, in my youth, I didn't have much interest in mushrooms as much as wild plants, botany and herbalism and so forth. Look at this one. Look at that. It's like the size of my hand. Beautiful. Um, not quite sure how to cut it up, except to. I guess that'll do. Um, but with the very few mushrooms for the my background, I when I recently got into foraging, recently being in the last 15 to 20 years, um, I've had more questions than answers on those on things, and I've been more keenly interested in um, how they grow and what exactly it takes to get mushrooms started or what it takes to get fungus going, and this cluster, and this is beautiful, these stems or stipes, and every now and then there's this little one in there. I love that. It's they're pretty. The little ones that they all form at about the same time, and that's the interesting part with that too. Where was I? Oh, on learning mushrooms and foraging. Although I call myself a mycologist to some extent, and it's not me calling myself a mycologist, it's several people that I know who know a little bit about wild mushrooms are calling me a mycologist only because I know far more than most people that I know, simply by spending a lot of time as a guide, either out there learning myself or um, in small groups and as part of my job. Part of my job being that I am keenly interested in sharing my knowledge of the natural world with the world. So my job being this work that I'm doing, which I'm posting here. It's an interesting sound. So these stems are kind of thick and dense on the backside, and a little bit on the tough side. So I'm putting them in a bucket to be composted, because I don't see myself doing much with them. These are just wow, beautiful. Another piece that I'm not going to use. Oh, hello, insect. You can have a piece of mushroom. Here you go. There's so much. Sometimes when I have mushrooms, I think, well, there are only a few of them. Make the best of them here. Um, I had some lobster that was like that, and then I ended up taking the majority of the remainder of what I had, and rather than cutting it up and trying to make something out of it, I just dried it out and put it in my mushrooms for the winter jar, which is really whatever sits in a paper bag on the dashboard long enough and dries out and doesn't smell too bad makes it into the winter jar for soup. So back to these and also back to mycology. Um, Once I had an interest in it and in promoting myself, I took it to a new level. Like I came into the YouTube channel with an understanding of about 47 species of mushrooms, and understanding being that I know them well enough to identify them and either eat them or use them in a medicinal way. Um, and that said, has brought me to a much deeper understanding of not just mushrooms, but mycology, and a much deeper knowledge base, which now I don't actually have any idea of how many mushrooms that um, I know. It's a lot, and yet it's not that many. I don't know 1,000. I know probably around 200. That's not that much, but it's more than most people have any experience with, and it's enough to be able to have um, have that as a backdrop for foraging. It's more than just a little bit of a side hustle. It's more like I really see mushrooms as a strong part of my makeup and my background and what I share in terms of knowledge and so on. For one thing, I learned that um, Excidia is extremely high in cyanocobalamin, or vitamin B12, which I am deficient in. And I think it's ironic that this is one of the mushrooms that I know so well and that I have collected so extensively. See if I can find a jar of it up here. I'm not seeing one right now, but it was in the base of one of these jars up here that I have on the shelf that I keep here. Excidia is also known as wood ear or tree ear. I understand that it's more commonly known. Hello, insect. Your cousins are all hanging out over here. I don't know what, it looks like a borer of some sort. Um, this is just beautiful. So with that, with the current background in mycology, I feel like I'm at a par with some of the better known mycologists in the Northeast. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. at least I have enough knowledge with it to be able to share it publicly and to have a much better understanding of them in general. I feel like part of my calling is to help people recognize that we have a wild food source that's available to us if we would just learn it and take care of it in a sustainable way. And it's my highest function to share that knowledge. So mycology is one piece of the bigger picture. It's also a resource for just mushrooms are cleansing, and they have minerals and compounds in them that we can't find elsewhere. We can laboratory produce some of them, but we can't really replicate the ingredients that make up mushrooms. It's not something that we can just manufacture. So I'm getting down there. I only have a few left, but this has been entertaining. I don't know how long this video is. I have no idea. I do know that I've got almost a pot full of oysters, which is insane. I don't remember having this many, and now I want to go look for more, of course. Not right this minute, but just amazing to have this resource at our fingertips when we step into nature. I believe that every encounter I have with nature where it shows itself in abundance for my for taking and for sharing the knowledge that there is a God, and there is a God teaching me about what it means to not just survive, but to do well, to thrive on the abundance that the world provides, that nature provides. Oh my gosh, this pot, it's a 3-quart pot, and it's nearly full. I'm blown away. I don't know if you can hear when I am cutting these, they make sort of a crunching noise. The stem is kind of stiff, and you can probably hear when as I'm throwing them in the bucket, the stiffness of it. They're hearty. These cut really easily, and they do cook down really nicely into a soft, almost fish-like, something like whitefish, except it's nothing like whitefish. And that's a sort of a generic thing also. What is whitefish? Like flounder, sole. I can't think of too many others right now. I'm not on that wavelength. But I think they would pair well with vegetables, with pasta. I know that it's got a really delicate flavor from what I've heard, and also from my own experience. But I've almost always buttered these up so heavily with butter or put them in soups, and I've lost their flavor to where it's just sort of mushroom. But oyster has an almost sweet. I think of it a little bit like sweet tooth, but it's not as sweet as sweet tooth. Um, Hydnum repandum. Um, but Pleurotus ostriatus takes flavors really well. It's mild. Some people describe the flavor as anise-like, and I think that just means that it's kind of sweet. It smells a little bit like anise sometimes. This one does not. I mean, it has a sweetly pungent odor to it, but it's not intense, not specific to. I don't think it's specific to anise. Clink. It's loud. Alright. Oh, there's some nice clusters here. Getting down there. I only have half a pound left-ish. Maybe more than that. Oh, this pot, it's gonna be really full. It's right up to we're like at 2 inches from the top. Well, if that, we're like an inch and a half from the top. I'll have to show you in a second. I want to get the rest of these cleaned up and get them in there. And I was going to say about mushrooms, picking them is always the challenge. I don't like to mess with the mycelia. I don't like to disturb the mycelia. So I generally will take a knife, pocket knife. I always carry a pocket knife into the woods, or scissors. Scissors are a great one too. A pair of Fiskars scissors for like $7, for mushrooms specifically, but for cutting leaves off of plants, for taking medicinals and various things. Having a pair of scissors to cut the mushroom off of its base. Come with me, insect. There we go. We have a home in the mushroom bit. And there's more. Getting down there. There's that one too. Let's get that one up. Cleaning the mushroom with a stiff brush, cutting them up or cutting them off of their base with either with scissors or a pocket knife so as not to disturb the mycelia. And the reason I don't want to disturb the mycelia is because sometimes when you do, it stops production, or it causes an unnatural jump, and something that mushrooms need in order to happen is a jump from one stage to another. And usually a mushroom takes a significant event for that to occur. sometimes a tree falling against another tree, a tree dropping in the forest, a sudden thud, a sudden change in its environment, um, something that causes it to go from one stage and just get a little bit of a push from nature to make it jump into the next stage. And I don't entirely understand that, except that having grown shiitakes a few times and still growing them, um, I know that there are certain conditions that need to be met to get a shiitake going, even in a log, where you think that they need a certain amount of moisture, they need a certain amount of temperature, they need very particular things. And all in all, um, when those conditions are met, there are still things that may not get met, that cause it to not be able to jump from one stage to another. But in general, disturbing mycelia to me is causing an unnatural jump. Let me back off. So this is my 3-quart pot, and it is it's full of pearl oyster, and I'm stoked about that. I will cook these down. In fact, I'm going to turn some of them over right now. Let's see if I can do this. Hold this and do this at the same time, right off the handle here. Sort of turn these there. Oh, I'll lose a few. Because of the nature of mushrooms, they're absorbent and not as juicy sometimes. These are not juicy, they're almost dry. They do contain moisture, yes. However, it's been so dry that these are, I would say that they're not as soft, but they are nonetheless breaking down really nicely and making a beautiful mash with the squash. So I'm really liking this. I'm curious to see how this tastes. And looks like I need to add a little more oil to the base of this, or turn the heat down. Maybe some water in there, but at least get some more. Wow, that was hot. I have a pot of a pot of blackberry jam underway here, and I didn't realize how hot it was. I just zinged the underside of my arm. But just give this a little more olive oil on the base there. I would have done more butter, but I kind of feel like I'm done retrieving butter from the refrigerator. So that looks pretty good, and they are, like I said, they're cooking down nicely, almost into a mash, which I'm really stoked about. I think this is going to be really, really nice on toast, or as a sandwich, or oh, I don't know. It looks really wonderful. So there we have it. This is summer squash and oyster mushroom that it's being sauteed, cooked down, and I thank you for watching along as I cut through approximately 3 pounds of oyster. Yeah, at least that feels like the whole pot there feels like about 2/3 of a brick, and a brick is 8 pounds, so 2/3 of 8 would be around 5 pounds, not 3. So, ish. Curious. But anyway, thank you for watching, and thank you for tagging along in this extended video of mycology and oyster mushrooms and what I do with them. And I have added to that a little bit of smoked sea salt, which I think is a wonderful flavor. Salt, as in salt water, black pepper, and I did not add garlic because I don't want to mask the flavor too much. Cheers.